Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I've always been pretty good at basketball. My dad taught me how to play when I was young, and I practiced almost every day since then. By the time I reached high school, I was good enough to make the varsity team, but I preferred playing casual games with my friends instead of dealing with the pressure of competitive sports. That day started like any other Saturday. I met up with my two best friends at our usual spot, the public basketball court near our neighborhood. We'd been tight since third grade, and playing basketball together on weekends was our thing. We usually played for a couple of hours, nothing too intense, just having fun and staying active. We were about 1 hour into our usual routine when this woman and her son showed up. The kid looked around 13, and at first everything seemed normal. The kid approached us and asked if we'd be interested in playing a 2v2 match. I thought it was cool that he wanted to play with us older kids, so I agreed. One of my friends sat out while the other played with me against the kid and his friend who was already at the court. Now, I'm not trying to brag, but my friend and I were obviously better players. We're 3 years older and had more experience. We scored quite a few points, but we weren't being aggressive or showing off, just playing normally. That's when things took a weird turn. Just as we were wrapping up the game, the woman stormed over to us. She yelled for someone to stop, and I wasn't sure who she was talking to since my friends and I were standing together. When she clarified she was talking to me, she accused me of cheating because I had scored too many points. When I asked how I was cheating and my friend backed me up with the same question, she got even more agitated. She claimed we were ganging up on her and accused me of knocking her son over and injuring him. She threatened to take me to the police station or call him herself. I told her to do whatever she needed to do. Her son tried to defuse the situation by telling his mom to stop embarrassing him and insisting he wasn't hurt. She just snapped at him to be quiet, claiming she was doing this for his own good. She pulled out her phone and actually called the police. I couldn't believe this was happening over a friendly basketball game. My friends and I just stood there, completely dumbfounded. Within minutes, 2 police officers arrived at the court. When the first officer asked what was happening, I tried to explain, but the woman actually hit me in the chest to stop me from talking. I was shocked. Did she really just assault me in front of police officers? She immediately started telling them that I had hurt her son during the 2v2 game. I explained that I hadn't done anything wrong and suggested they could ask my friends. This made her even more furious, and she started screaming that I was a liar and that my friends couldn't be used as evidence. My friends jumped to my defense, explaining that I was innocent and that we had just played a normal game without any harm done. The poor kid just stood there looking mortified. I almost felt bad for him, having to deal with such an embarrassing parent. The police officers decided to take us all to the station to sort things out. I was nervous, but I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. At the station, her whole story fell apart when her own son finally had enough and told the truth. He explained that I never hurt him, that his mom was making the whole thing up, and that he was just embarrassed by her behavior. The officers asked me if I wanted to press charges against the woman for hitting me in the chest earlier. Remember how she did that right in front of them? Yeah, not her smartest move. When I looked at her smug face, which wasn't so smug anymore, I told them yes, I would like to press charges. The woman's face went from angry red to ghost white in seconds. She started stammering excuses about how she was just protecting her son and trying to downplay the hit as just a little tap. But the officers weren't having any of it. They charged her with assault of a minor, and she ended up having to pay a fine and attend anger management classes. I still see her son at the basketball court. He's actually a pretty cool kid who always apologizes for his mom's behavior that day, even though it wasn't his fault. We even play together sometimes, without his mom around, of course. This happened several years ago when my daughter was almost 1 year old. I was a first-time mom and absolutely cherished every moment I could spend with my baby. I had this amazing mixed breed dog who weighed about 35 pounds. Not the biggest dog, but she was incredibly loving and protective of my daughter from day one. That summer day started like any other. I had my daughter in her playpen outside under a big oak tree, keeping her safe from the sun while we played. My dog and I would entertain her by blowing bubbles. She loved watching our dog try to catch them in the air. After playing for a while, my daughter held up her empty cup. I told my dog to stay by the door and watch the baby while I went to refill it. Just as I was in the kitchen getting the juice, I heard the most terrifying sound. My dog making this horrific half bark, half growl before crashing through the screen door. My heart stopped. I ran outside to find the playpen flipped over my daughter, which turned out to be a blessing in disguise. A massive purebred dog had gotten into our yard and tried to attack my baby. My dog had managed to knock the playpen over my daughter, shielding her before engaging with the other dog. I grabbed a shovel from the back steps, ready to defend both my dog and daughter, but my dog was already chasing the bigger dog away. After quickly checking that my daughter was completely unharmed, I could still hear the fight continuing in the distance. I was terrified. This other dog was twice my dog's size, and I was sure I'd never see her again. I rushed inside with my baby and called a friend who lived in the direction the dogs had gone. 20 minutes of anxious pacing later, I heard scratching at my front door. There was my dog, tail wagging despite being covered in blood. After cleaning her up, I was amazed to find most of the blood wasn't even hers. She just had a few wounds on her shoulder and back. A couple hours later, after a vet visit confirmed she'd be fine, my friend came by to check on us. That's when he told me something surprising. The other dog's owner had to pick up his badly injured dog after someone recognized it. I couldn't believe my little mixed breed had won against a dog twice her size. Just as we were discussing this, someone knocked on my door. It was a police officer with the other dog's owner. The owner immediately started demanding to see my dog, saying he wanted it destroyed and that he was going to sue me because my dog had killed his grand champion stud. Shocked, I asked if his dog was really dead. He confirmed that he'd had to put his dog down due to the severe injuries and insisted that I would pay for this. The police officer asked me to explain what had happened. After I described how the other dog had entered my yard and tried to attack my baby and how my dog had protected her, the officer questioned the owner about why such an expensive dog was running loose. The owner casually replied that his dog sometimes needed freedom, dismissing concerns by saying there was barely any traffic and his dog had never bitten anyone before. The police officer then turned to me and asked if I wanted to press charges, mentioning that this incident could cause lasting trauma for my daughter. The owner became even more agitated, insisting that my dog should be destroyed for killing his champion. The officer explained that my dog was simply protecting a child on our property and that the owner had no case. The owner refused to accept this, arguing that his purebred dog would never attack anyone, unlike what he called my mongrel. He then demanded to speak to the officer's supervisor. When the supervisor arrived, the owner tried to force his way into my house, yelling for me to bring my dog out. The supervisor had to intervene to restore order. When the owner kept interrupting everyone to rant about his show champion, the supervisor told him to stop interrupting and asked to see my dog. As I led the supervisor inside, the owner tried to follow, but the first officer stopped him. When the owner complained about this being unfair, the officer warned him that the alternative was waiting in the police car in handcuffs. This made the owner even more indignant. I showed the supervisor everything: my dog's wounds, the broken screen door, and the torn-up yard from the fight. He patted my dog's head and praised her bravery before going back outside to deliver his verdict. He declared that my dog was within her rights to protect her young master. When the owner complained about his lost stud fees, the supervisor pointed out that such a valuable dog shouldn't have been running unsupervised through the neighborhood. He explained that my dog was simply doing its job protecting its owners, and unless I wanted to sue the owner, there was no case. He then added a warning that given the owner's threats against my dog, if anything happened to her, the owner would be their prime suspect. The dog owner's face turned red as he stormed off. While I felt bad about his dog having to be put down, I was incredibly grateful for my brave little protector who saved my daughter that day. Backstory: I work as a lifeguard instructor during summers, and my dad is a supervisor at a fire alarm company. One of his biggest clients is this fancy hotel downtown. My dad and the hotel owner have been friends for years, so my family and a couple friends get to use their pool facilities for free, which is pretty sweet considering how expensive it usually is. Story: last week, temperatures hit over 30 degrees Celsius, 86 degrees Fahrenheit, making it unbearable to stay indoors. I decided to take advantage of our pool privileges and invited my girlfriend and two best friends for a swim. I called the hotel owner first to make sure it was okay, and he gave us the green light. We arrived around 2 p.m. when the sun was blazing. The hotel has two pools, a shallow kids pool about a meter deep and an adult pool that goes from 2.4 to 4 meters deep. When we got there, the place was pretty empty except for one woman who left shortly after. We set up our stuff on some chairs, and I went to grab sodas and sandwiches from the pool bar. We had a quick snack and headed into the adult pool, making sure to enter quietly and respectfully. No splashing, no yelling, just casual swimming. About 5 minutes into our swim, this woman and her kid show up. The woman immediately demanded that we get out of the pool. When I asked what the problem was, she claimed we were taking up too much space and her precious child couldn't swim. The kid was maybe 7 years old and definitely shouldn't have been in the adult pool. Plus, the pool was huge, 30 by 50 meters. There was plenty of space for everyone. I tried explaining to her that this was the adult pool and there was more than enough room for everyone. She responded by yelling at us to get out immediately. Then her kid joined in, claiming his father owned the pool. I couldn't help but laugh since I actually know the owner's family. When I told them this wasn't true and that I knew the real owner's family, the woman bent down and splashed water at me like a child. She mockingly asked if I was mad about getting wet, which made me wonder if she realized we were in a pool. When she demanded again that we get out, I calmly refused and told her I was fine where I was. She stormed off to complain to the lifeguard, who had witnessed everything. The lifeguard came over to reassure us, saying he'd handle the situation since he'd heard what really happened. When he went back to speak with her, he explained that we hadn't done anything wrong and reminded her that her child couldn't be in the adult pool. The woman became hysterical, insisting her child was the best swimmer there and could go wherever he wanted. Then she started screaming false accusations about being hit and called for a manager. The bar employee who was in charge that day came over to investigate. When the woman accused me of hitting her, everyone present, the bar employee, my girlfriend, my friends and I, immediately denied it. She then called us all liars and threatened to send us to jail. She even had the audacity to demand our food and drinks as compensation for our supposed rudeness. When I refused, she yelled at me about respecting my elders. The bar employee had already called the owner, who arrived quickly. The woman tried to claim that we had hit both her and her child, with her kid backing up her lies. The owner shut it down immediately, revealing he had seen everything on the security cameras and knew they had snuck in without paying. Upon learning about the cameras, she left immediately. The owner apologized to us and gave us free sandwiches. We thought it was over, but after changing and heading to the parking lot to meet my mom, the woman was waiting. She accused us of stealing her things and lying, then tried to grab my bag containing all our belongings. I managed to hold on to it, being stronger than her. She started screaming false accusations about being hit again and threatened to call the police. The owner, who my girlfriend had quietly gone to get when she spotted the woman, announced that he would be the one calling the police for her lying and harassment. He told us to go while he handled the situation. We left with my mom, who hadn't heard any of the commotion. Later that day, my dad had a meeting with the owner about upgrading the hotel's fire alarm system. He told my dad that after we left, the police came and arrested the woman. Turns out she had drugs on her, was drunk in public, and had several other charges. She ended up getting 6 months in jail and a hefty fine for drug possession and disorderly conduct. She's now permanently banned from all hotels in the chain. I've been working night shifts at this consulting firm for about 3 years now. Initially, it was pretty intense. We handled tons of urgent cases throughout the night, requiring both phone consultations and physical presence at the office for groundwork. But recently, they changed our workflow, significantly reducing our caseload. Because of this and some staff shortages, they cut down to just 1 or 2 people per night shift. The way our time off system works is interesting. Even when you're technically off, you might get called in for emergencies. Our work is split into 2 main parts: handling urgent consultations over phone, email, and doing groundwork at the office. Pretty straightforward usually, but this week things got complicated. It started when I woke up feeling absolutely terrible. I'm talking high fever, throat feeling like sandpaper, splitting headache, the works. First thing I did was take a COVID test, which came back negative. Since I wasn't scheduled to work that day or the next, I figured I'd wait to see if I got better before bothering my supervisor. The next day, I was still sick but slightly less miserable. Being responsible, I decided to call my supervisor to let them know what was up. I explained my situation, telling them that while I was on time off and feeling unwell, I wouldn't be able to come in for groundwork if needed, but I could still handle any urgent consultations from home in case of an emergency. My supervisor immediately shot back that if I was sick, I needed to see a doctor and get a medical certificate since I could still be called in to work. I tried explaining again that this was exactly why I was informing them. I could still manage the consultation part if needed, just not the physical office work. But they wouldn't hear it, insisting that I needed to get a doctor's note if I was sick, saying it was protocol. Now here's the thing. I actually have this benefit where I can take sick leave without a doctor's note. I was planning to use that because I was starting to feel better and I knew I'd probably be fine to work tomorrow. Plus, I was scheduled as the only person on shift for several days this week. If I got an official medical certificate, it would probably put me out for the whole week, and I didn't want to leave my team in a bind. But my supervisor insisted. She absolutely would not budge on the doctor's note thing. Finally, I told them that if they insisted, I would go see a doctor right then. And wouldn't you know it, the doctor took one look at me and wrote me a medical certificate covering me for the entire week. Now my workplace is in complete chaos trying to find coverage for all my upcoming solo shifts. The only people available to cover are the higher-ups who usually just delegate everything to us. My team manager called me later that day. They asked if I really needed the whole week off, mentioning how short-staffed they were. I simply explained that I had tried to tell the supervisor I could handle the consultation work from home, but they had insisted on a doctor's note, and I was just following protocol as requested. Those higher-ups who usually act so important now have to actually work night shifts. Funny how strictly following protocol sometimes works out exactly how they don't want it to. I'm just here at home following doctor's orders and my supervisor's insistence on proper documentation while they scramble to cover all my shifts. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.